Hello, everyone. Welcome to Conversations with Sekani, a podcast for people in their 20s who are trying to figure out life and not get lost along the way. Today's guest is Desirae Terry, a licensed psychotherapist, speaker, and author of the upcoming memoir, Spinal How My Medical Trauma Uncaged Me. For years, Desiree spent her identity around achievements, resilience, and always being the person who had everything under control. But after a catastrophic spinal injury during pregnancy changed the course of her life, she was forced to confront a much deeper question. Who are we when the roles we built our identity around are taken away? Today, through her therapy practice, writing, and speaking, she helps people move beyond perfectionism, people pleasing, and the pressure to always be good enough so they can build lives rooted in authenticity rather than performance. Desiree, welcome to Conversations with Sekani. It's a pleasure to have you on.
That was such a beautiful introduction. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, so I'm glad you think it was beautiful. There was a lot of
It
a
was
whole lot
beautiful.
of
I'm
tongue
like,
twisters.
wow, maybe I've got something here.
Wow. All right. So yes, Desiree, I want you to take us back to your 20s, right? Who were you during that season of your life? And what dreams or expectations did you have then?
That's such a great question. My 20s, I was such a confident athlete. I was an elite athlete. My body could just do so many amazing things. My dreams were just like, I'm going to get married. I'm going to have four children. It's going to be two boys and two girls. All the expectations that you have when you're building your life and dreaming. I dreamt of having a career that was just helping women and helping families. And I didn't really know exactly how I was going to get there. But I was a very focused person in my 20s. I was not the girl that had my hair down, playing. Like I was still really deep in the throes of perfectionism and very strict rules and very strict expectations for myself that either came from myself or from family or society. Um, so I was a big dreamer. I had a lot of really big goals that I wanted to accomplish with my family, with my career, with my social life. Um, with my athleticism, I wanted to kept being a gymnast and a cheerleader, and then everything changed for me.
Oh, all right. So when you say everything changed for you, what exactly happened?
So when I was starting my family with my husband, like many women, we ran into some fertility problems, and so I went to the fertility doctor, got all of this testing done, and what was found among several things with my ovaries was a pituitary tumor. And I was able to get pregnant after a couple of rounds of fertility treatments. And when I was 32 weeks pregnant, I started having all of these symptoms that correlated with this tumor growing and becoming dangerous. So I went into the hospital and they wanted to do all these tests to make sure that that I was safe and that the tumor wasn't um, hurting me. And fortunately and unfortunately, it wasn't the tumor. So they then thought that I had meningitis. And when you are testing for meningitis, they do a lumbar puncture, which is them going in with a needle in your spine and taking out fluid to test it. And when you're pregnant, you're, not allowed to have any radiation. So they were really going in blind. So I'm bent over this table with my 32-week-old miracle baby bump that we worked so hard for. And I'm exposing my spine to the doctor. And um, when they went in, they hit something that they shouldn't have in my spine. My leg flew up, hit the table, my hips dislocated, and I couldn't feel from my hips down anymore. I couldn't feel my legs, couldn't feel my toes. And Um, I was not good at speaking up at the time. I didn't want to cause any trouble. I didn't want to be the wrong kind of patient. And so I just stayed silent. And um, the doctor does it not one more time, not two more times, not three more times, but four more times incorrectly. And from that point forward, I was unable to walk. I was in the hospital for 5 weeks doing occupational therapy, physical therapy, relearning how to go to the bathroom. I couldn't shower myself. I couldn't get myself up out of bed. And of course, they were monitoring the baby several times a day to make sure that he was okay. I'd completely lost my independence. I couldn't even sit on my own because the weight of my body was too much for my pelvis to handle with the damage. So not only did this at this point make me meet my external challenge of my body not responding to me, but it also made me face the internal challenges as well, the voices that told me to stay quiet. I realized that there were so many other voices in my head that told me to be happy, to look a certain way, to be the best, to achieve the most. And that was really when perfectionism, I realized, was keeping me captive in these rules that I thought were keeping me safe, but actually were keeping me disconnected from myself.
Oh, all right. Desiree. I know when you were saying your story, I just felt cold, right? Because even at that moment when it was almost like a detriment to your health, you still didn't speak up because of, people pleasing, right? And the
Hmm.
funny thing is, it's not just you, right? There's a whole lot of people out there, currently, specifically younger, right? Okay. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. You went away, but now I hear you.
All right. Okay. Sorry about that. So,
No
like
problem.
I was saying, yeah, there are young adults today who find it very difficult to speak up, right? Even when it's a matter of, life and death, right? For
Hmm.
example, I mean, most people might not even know this. There's this instance of you going to make your hair, right? And the stylist does something you don't like because you don't want to offend the stylist. It's like, oh, I like it. And then you go home and cry.
Yes, absolutely. I've done that. I have done that. That's why I'm laughing because it seems like such a minimal thing, but
Right.
it's the perfect example of like it's our body and we're still like,
Exactly.
you did a great job, hairstylist, even though we're boiling inside because we hate it.
Exactly. It's like, wow. I mean, people don't even realize it. When it comes to this whole hair thing, like that I gave now, people think it's minor, but it's not actually. It's part of the sign that you're actually a people pleaser, right?
Absolutely.
You're trying to validate other people's feeling at the expense of your feeling, right? So I'm glad we get to talk about that, right?
Yeah.
So you said that after the incident, you started to actually think about everything that happened. So how did you feel about it, and how were you able to, navigate this whole thing with people pleasing?
People pleasing is like ingrained in us, right? Especially as
Yeah.
women. And um, it wasn't until I lost everything, my body, my dreams, I was no longer able to carry children. So losing that dream of I'm gonna have 4 kids and I'm gonna be this, really capable mom. I wasn't anymore. I could no longer carry my children. I was now in a very disabled body. I have since had 5 reconstructive surgeries, and it triggered a chronic illness that has caused so much disability for me as a mother and as, just a human. And it wasn't until I lost all of that and then had to start advocating for myself in the healthcare system, advocating for myself um, socially and with the resources that I could get for my children, advocating for them um, that I really started to put people pleasing so much lower on my list. And it wasn't because it wasn't as important. The voice that was telling me to be good was still knocking on my head. Like, you're doing this wrong. Don't upset anybody. But for me, it really came down to if you're going to lose everything and rebuild your life, are you going to rebuild it on these little paper straws of perfectionism and people pleasing that aren't actually a sure foundation, that don't actually keep you steady? When all of that falls away, are you going to put the paper straws back, or are you going to build something that is real and foundational and structurally sound? And as I was facing this physical climb up this mountain of recovery, I just decided that I was going to do the emotional work with it. I was really thrown into the middle of it. And as I was doing my own trauma therapy, I wanted to untangle all of these voices that told me I had to be a certain way for external validation, because the external validation wasn't serving me anymore. It serves you in a way that makes you feel like maybe you feel good for a moment, but it's not lasting steadiness. It's not lasting gratitude. It's not lasting joy and peace, right? When we're seeking external validation. So, identifying all the voices that were holding me in people pleasing was the first step in order to then name them when they came up and heal them along the way of the rebuilding journey.
All right. So thank you, Desiree, for sharing your story. Um, I do appreciate that, you shared your story and you were also vulnerable to us, right? I really
Thank
appreciate that.
you.
And I want to
Vulnerability
say,
matters, right? That's how we connect
yeah.
with each other.
Exactly, it matters. And I also want to say I'm really sorry for what happened, right?
Thank
And
you.
I'm glad I get to learn from you, and a whole lot of people get to learn, right? And there's something that happened recently, right, with
Mm,
me when it comes to people pleasing also, because it's something we struggle with, especially women, right? We
hmm
struggle with that a lot. I don't know why, but I had a friend that wanted me to go out with them, right? They were like, Joy, let's hang out. And I know that I wasn't comfortable hanging out. Like I had a lot of things to do. And then I
hmm
was so worried, like, I don't want to hurt this person's feelings. How do I say no? I thought about it for days. How am I going to
Yeah.
say no? Right? To the point that I had to, talk to the AI. I actually had to speak with AI.
Talk
Say,
through it. Yeah.
right, like how do I tell my friend I don't want to go for this event and without hurting their feelings? And yeah, I was like, just say no, you're busy. I was like,
Yeah.
you know what? I'll do it regardless. Let me say no. And then I called. I was like, hi, I don't think I'll be able to show up. Something came. I was like, oh, okay. Like, just like that. Okay. Do you see?
W- How
I was
did
like,
that feel
wow.
to how did that feel to say no and then for it to be received with such grace and
Um,
casualness?
wow. Like, just like that. So I was like, so all these thoughts, all this overthinking, it was really for nothing, right? I was just overthinking everything. So I just said this story for someone out there, right? To listen and know that you can always just say no.
Hmm.
If it doesn't work for you, you can say no and it wouldn't hurt the way you think it will, right? Because there's this quote that says we suffer more in our head than
We
in
do.
real life. Right.
Yeah, it is. What we make up is going to happen is so much worse than what actually generally happens. In my language, I would call that part. I have these five perfect parts that I have seen very universally in women in my work, and one of them is called the perfect sidekick. And it really
Mhm.
rules your life this way by making you supportive, loyal, caretaking, doing kind of the
Mhm.
emotional labor, saying yes when you really don't have the capacity to. And so, what is so beautiful about what you did was you saw the part, you kind of worked through it with AI, which is a great way to do it, and then came up with
Mhm.
an appropriate boundary for yourself That is exactly what it looks like to notice your part, your perfect part that's knocking on the door. Say, I hear you, and I'm going to choose something that's in my value system right now. And your friend who trusts and loves you really understood. And it almost is just as simple as that sometimes, right?
Right? Exactly. Wow. Okay. So I'm glad we got to talk about this, right? So, we've spoken about people pleasing. Now
Hmm.
let's talk about perfectionism, right? Or perfectionism. I don't know if I'm saying that
Hmm.
correctly.
Yep, you got
So
it.
can you tell us, right? So actually, what is perfectionism? How does it, play out in women and in everyday's life, in our everyday life, basically?
So, perfectionism is really this kind of relentless drive to achieve flawlessness. It's not
Mm.
just the setting of like excessively high standards, but it really involves judging yourself based entirely on external validation. And this leads to a lot of self-criticism, a lot of self-doubt, and really you've set all of your eggs in the basket of I'm going to do what everyone else thinks that I should do, what society has told me is good, at the cost of abandoning myself. And perfectionism isn't actually about being perfect, or people say like, oh, I'm such a perfectionist, I just need to have everything organized. That's not what perfectionism is. Perfectionism is a safety measure that our brains have developed to keep us safe in loving and belonging, because we all come to the world with two things that we each want: to belong and to be loved. And so over time, as social beings, we take in all of the data that is being given to us from our families, from our upbringing, from culture, from society, and we shapeshift ourselves to feel belonging and loving and to be loved. And so if being loved in a society looks like overachieving, or being loved in a society looks like always being in the background, being supportive, doing all the things behind the scenes at the sacrifice of yourself, or if it is about always being positive, like everything is fine, I'm always great, optimism, somebody has it worse than me, all of that is perfectionism. And it's all coming at the cost of yourself. And if you don't know what your values are, then you will default to what the society or environment around you tells you your value should be. And as women, we've been told for generations that our value comes from, being the overachiever. Our value comes from not being the main character, but being in the background. Our value comes from, absorbing the invisible load and always saying that everything's okay and I'm good and I can handle it. If we don't shift to personal values, that external pressure will be the thing that really drives our life. And that leads to some serious burnout because you aren't living the life that is fulfilling to you in your soul. You're living a life that you think is going to get you validation or status or safety in your community, in your environment, in your world. So perfectionism really is this defense mechanism that we have come up with to keep us safe in a society that has told us we need to be X, Y, and Z in order to be valued.
Oh, all right. So thank you for explaining that one for me, actually. I think now I understand better, right? I
Good.
used to think it's like a character flaw, but now I see that it's actually more of a defense mechanism, right? It's more of who we are. It depends on how we control it, right? It depends on
Mhm.
how you acknowledge that you have something like this and then you work on it, basically. Wow, okay. So, as a
Yeah, great
therapist,
reflection.
right. As a therapist, I believe you've seen many people struggle with feeling not enough, right? So where do
Mhm.
that belief usually begin? And where can one start to, work on that belief?
How can we start working on that belief?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, the pressure to be good enough. I mean, it goes along with all of this. And again, good enough it is that safety. Like, if I'm good enough, then I'm going to belong in that social circle. If I'm good enough, I'm not going to get fired. If I'm good enough, I'll have equal pay. I mean, name it. Like, that is a beautiful phrase, a widespread phrase that I think every woman, especially, and I'm sure men too, as I've seen men also struggle with it, but especially women, this idea, do more to be valued. And the problem with good enough is the finish line keeps moving. There is never a good enough because the bar gets raised somewhere from external pressure. So, good enough is really a hoax, and it keeps us captive in that rule that we can achieve good enough. But if the good enough measure is always changing, then we're running on a hamster wheel and not going anywhere. So, the first way that we can really work on deconstructing good enough is, again, recognition. I've come up with these five universal perfect inner critics that um, are signs that perfectionism and this good enoughness is running someone's life. So one of them is the perfect child, and she really teaches you to be easy and obedient and impressive and low maintenance. And it always kind of makes you scan for what other people want before you have decided what you want. So, this is the voice that tells you to be good, to not disappoint anybody, that you don't need much, to keep people proud. And what that really costs you is your preferences, your ability to know what you actually want, honesty, all of those things. And that I have found is really universal in women. The second one is the perfect achiever, and she really turns your worth into a scoreboard. It tells you that rest must be earned, failure is humiliating, and being average is dangerous. So, what this costs you is rest. It costs you presence in your life. It costs you embodied joy because you're always scanning to look for, I'm only safe and I'm only worthy if I achieve the next big thing. The third one that we need to really learn to recognize is this part that I have deemed perfectly positive. And she really edits your pain before anybody else can see it. She is half glass full. She is the optimist. She tells you to be grateful, be spiritual, be hopeful, be fine, and look on the bright side. That's what that voice really tells you. But what that costs you is really the range of being fully human, of being fully in your emotional experience. We're emotional beings. If we're shutting that down, then we're not living to this full measure of our creation. The fourth one is the perfect body. And she really convinces you that your body is a project that must be managed at all times. Your lashes, your hair, your size, your color scheme, whatever it is that is the trend, right? But it turns swimsuits and photos and intimacy and all of these beautiful things into this need for acceptability. And that really costs you your memories. I can't even tell you the amount of photos that I have that when I look back at them, I only remember how I felt about my body in that moment. I don't even remember what I was doing that day. I only remember how it made me feel to be in that picture and to feel insecure. And so that really costs you this embodied present life. And the last one is the perfect sidekick, which we already talked about, which is really about you being valuable from being in the background, from being the supporter, being loyal, caretaking for everybody, being the helper, being the fixer, and never making it about you. But that costs you your boundaries. It costs you reciprocity in your relationships and the experience of just being chosen for who you are, not what you can provide for somebody else. So, this big pattern of, all of these five parts, searching for belonging and admiration and acceptance, that's all safety. So, in order to break free from always striving to be good enough and people please, we have to recognize all of these inner critics when they pop up and then start to heal them by understanding that they are trying to protect you and keep you in belonging and love. So we don't want to shun them. They're not bad. They are a part, they're a part of us. They're in there. But once we recognize them, then we can really start to understand what they're trying to protect us from and replace that value of belonging with something like honesty. I'd rather be honest in my life than always be scanning to see what everybody else's opinion is. That is what keeps you grounded and rooted in your own reality and in your own fully embodied human experience. So we can move past good enough. We just have to recognize when these parts are bullying us into our choices and reframe them, and then also make a choice that is within our value system. And that comes from really identifying what your values actually are so that these parts aren't ruling your life.
All right. So thank you for, sharing that wonderful insights with us, right? And I'll have to replay this
I hope you
recordings.
do.
Yeah, I have
We
to
got
so
to
I could
study it. We got to get to know them.
exactly. We have to study it actually. So we could make conscious decisions moving on actually.
Yep.
And yes, finally, I want you to, talk to someone out there, right? First of all, social media, that's one thing, right? It often rewards, looking like everything is perfect. Right. So what would
Mhm.
you say to someone who is exhausted from trying to, keep up that image? Right.
First, I would say me too. I'm exhausted. I'm exhausted that we are put on this pedestal of having to look perfect, seem perfect, our life, our house, our clothes, whatever it is. Like, oh my gosh, it's exhausting to be living for someone else's standards. And social media is the perfect example of saying this is the trend. So fit into the trend if you want to get likes and validation. Likes are validation, right? They feel good. It's like, I see you on this planet. You are doing great. I'm here for it. I'm witnessing you. There's so much beauty that can come from that, like connection and community, but it has to come from a place of authenticity or vulnerability. Otherwise, what that does is it gives validation to these perfect parts that are running your life and that are keeping you in this burnout state. And I have been burnt out by social media and by the expectations of what things need to look like. And my advice for somebody who is feeling that way is one, you are not alone in feeling that way. I would bet that even the women who are the ones that are curating their life to look that way are equally, if not more, exhausted by it because they're buying into that lie that a curated life is a better one. And number two, I would say choose what really matters to you. Is it the likes and the validation, or is it building community through authenticity and connection with people that you've met throughout your life or that are going through the same thing as you? I'm interested in women who are honest. I'm interested in, I mean, like, not that we don't support all women, okay? But when I'm on social media, I am attracted to the things that I relate to. And I don't relate to the perfect house. I don't relate to the perfect curated aesthetic anything. Like, I relate to the mom who is exhausted and still has to go to work, and she is like showing us a real life picture of that in between transition. Or I'm relating to the woman who is saying, like, this is a real capture of my life. And it's so fun to post beautiful pictures. And I think that there's a real balance there of like, get on and be honest with your life, follow the people, and give that like reinforcement to the people who are really having this authentic experience with social media. And so you're not alone. And, we have this kind of crazy thing in our brain where we know that we shouldn't compare and that we know that social media is fake, but our brain just believes it anyway. So once we believe it, it's again like recognizing that inner critic. When our first snap is like, oh, I wish I was that, or oh, that's really beautifully curated, or oh, like I want to be living that life. The first step is recognizing that, like, oh, that makes sense that my brain would immediately compare to that. And then you have to be honest with yourself, like, but what really matters to me? Is it that I need, that I'm looking for reach, that I'm looking for connection? And that really goes back to identifying your values. Like, if your value is beauty, beautiful. If your value is connection, beautiful. Leaning into that will bring you so much more fulfillment and joy than trying to create a curated, perfect snapshot of a moment that probably doesn't exist.
Mm. Exactly. Whew. All right. So thank you. I would like to say I've learned a lot from our conversation, honestly. And like I said earlier, these are conversations where you actually have to go and sit with yourself and
Mm,
speak with yourself, tell yourself the truth, right? And from
yep.
then begin to make conscious effort to live a more happier life, right?
Mm.
Decentering people's opinion about you and seeking people's validation. So yeah, it's about choosing yourself basically and being happy, right? So
Yeah.
thank you, Desiree, for this amazing conversation. And it brings me to the final segment of my podcast. I call it the rapid fire segment. You could either
Fun.
answer with you could answer with a word or a phrase starting now. So, what
Okay.
is one word that describes your 20s?
Grief.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right. So, what is one word that describes you now?
Intentional.
That sounds better.
It sounds a
All
lot
right.
better. Yeah. That is a difference from letting perfectionism run my life versus my values run my life. Grief, joy.
Exactly. Wow. Okay. So, would you prefer coffee or tea?
Tea.
Okay. What is a book that deeply influenced you?
Oh, anything from Brene Brown. I just love her. The biggest one is Daring Greatly. That changed my life.
Wow, very greatly. Okay, and finally, what is one habit that helps you stay grounded?
Prayer.
Ooh, all right. So yes, thank you, Desiree. Thank you for, sharing your story with honesty and vulnerability. I really do appreciate that. I mean, it makes it relatable for people listening right now. And yes, before you go, where can listeners get to, learn more about you and also connect with you?
Yes, thank you. I would love to connect with all the listeners. I'm on Instagram at Desirae Terry Author. I'm also on TikTok at Desirae Terry Author, and my website is DesiraeTerry.com, where I have all of the latest of what's going on with my book and my speaking engagements and podcasts, and a newsletter that gives you practical tools for how you can create more freedom and break free from these old rules now.
All right. And I'm going to put the links in the show notes so it's easily accessible for
Awesome.
listeners. And
Thank
to
you
my
so much.
listeners, you're welcome. And to my listeners, I want to say thanks for tuning in to Conversations with Sekani. If this episode sparked something in you, just as it did in me, make sure to share to someone who you think might need this and also subscribe so you don't miss out on new episodes. Once again, thank you, Desiree. Do have a wonderful day ahead of you.
Thank you so much, Sekani. It's been such a joy.
You're welcome.